Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is claims for food and drink. So just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out the recording after the webinar. There's also going to be a chance for a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the little Q&A box or wait till the end, and we'll be happy to answer those. So today is all about food and drink in particular. It's something a bit different to what we've done before. Usually we're very focused on cosmetics. So we really wanted to touch on this industry as well, because we have the ability to test any kind of product, and we do. So just the agenda for today, we're going to be looking at types of claims for food and drink. Again, what are those categorized as? What kind of claims can you make? Parts of the products as part of the cooking process, sorry. So basically when we introduce products, look at how they're used in a cooking process with consumers. We'll be looking at the legislation in general for claims about food. So when we're breaking down those types of claims, we'll be talking about how that fits into the legislation of the world. And there's a few case studies in there as well, because it's really easy to understand the claims a bit more and how we get to substantiate them and look into them when you can see how we do it. So firstly, I've got Thomas with me here today. Thomas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Carys, and welcome everybody. My name is Thomas Marquardt. I can look back at about 25 years or so of market research experience, which is actually my life, at least my professional life. Most of the time I spent with Unilever, and actually most of the time I spent in foods. So this is a bit of a kind of coming back to a category that I've loved, because I'm a foodie. I love food. I love good eating. I worked in Unilever across a number of jobs, locally, global, and finally globally. I had the wonderful job in the end of heading globally the professional food section for market research in Unilever, which allowed me to travel the world and see how people in China and Brazil and whatever are cooking and what the differences are, which was big fun. After I left, I created my own market research consultancy, and I took over the German business for Ayton. Ever since, I've worked on these areas, and as I said, I'm happy to talk a bit more about food research today.
Thanks, Thomas. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the Regulatory Director at Ayton Global Research. So really, I'm focused on regulations to do with advertising standards, maybe the cosmetics industry, food and drink industry, but anything that affects the evidence that we provide as consumer research providers, making sure that your claims are going to be globally compliant and compliant in the markets that you're looking at in particular. So I've been at Ayton Global Research around 8 years now. So I'm really experienced in running studies and study design. And that's really where I draw all of my specialisms from. So Thomas, if you can kick us off with the types of claims, please.
Yeah, so when I was looking at claims, what kind of claims do you find? And I think in general, I think these four are the ones that you see most of the time. The first one, of course, is, as we talk about food, it's about taste. So there are lots of claims that you see ranging about how products taste and how far they taste better than, and often also very nice marketing speech explanations of a very good taste. There are claims on ingredients, so what's in there. There are claims about, especially when we talk about convenience products, performance, so how do they simplify your cooking. And there are quite a few claims on health and nutrition. And we'll take you through all of these four areas in a bit more detail. The first one is about taste, and as we all know, taste is very subjective. That's actually also why this is a typical case where you definitely need a number of consumers to validate and to qualify the taste, because if you only talk about two or three people, this may very well deviate from what the broad majority of people thinks. And you probably know if you discuss taste with your friends and your colleagues, you will not always agree. Great tasting cannot be really validated, but what you often see if you comes into validation is comparison claims. So you often compare versus a previous version of your product, so kind of improved recipe, improved and better taste. And of course, you can also compare versus your competition. So if you have a comparable product from a competitor, you might compare it against each other and see that yours is better than the other. And I think Carys brought us a nice case study of of this.
Sorry. Oh my God. Yes, exactly. So as Thomas said, comparing like for like is the best thing with taste. Which one tastes better? Yeah, and just finding that out. So my case study is from a supermarket chain. Is looking at a brand of baked beans, and basically they want to do a direct comparison against a competitor supermarket's baked beans, and yeah, hopefully find out that theirs comes out better. We're looking at other appealing aspects as well, so not just about taste, but things like the texture, the appearance, the quality, what they kind of think of the quality of it, just to get all of that feedback and yeah, see who's the winner. So basically, to conduct this study, it was conducted in the UK. It's 2 UK supermarket chains, so really important that we had shoppers from those supermarkets. So as you can see, we've got 50% of the consumers that were shopping at the client supermarket and 50% that were shopping at the competitor. So it's a really interesting comparison as well, because you kind of can look at not just only which was kind of overall rated better, but of your current kind of customers, which one did they prefer, and of your competitors' customers, which one did they prefer as well, giving you that extra level of comparison. It was a one-day study because essentially they were just testing one bean, tasting the other beans. They had to regularly eat and purchase baked beans, of course. We didn't want to have people that had never tried them and hate them. It would throw off everything that we have found out in our research. And they also had to be prepared the same way. So as we know with baked beans, you can cook them in a hob, you can cook them in the microwave, but it can create a different experience. So as long as the beans are being tested in the same way, that's what we need to make sure, because as we say, it's a direct comparison. So it has to be as close as possible to what they're comparing. So the first part of the results I want to look at is what we'd look at for our kind of claims side. So this comes directly from our reports. We've got a little appendix at the bottom, which gives you a summary of every question. And each question's kind of on the left-hand side there. We've then got the number of people that had a satisfied, a neutral, or a not satisfied answer, and then the percentage of people that said they were satisfied, neutral, not satisfied. So the percentage of satisfied is really what we're looking at most of the time, especially when it comes to claims. Two reasons. Firstly, you get your pass mark. So you can see that there's some that have a little asterisk next to them, and that's because they've achieved over 66% majority of people agreeing with the claim. So therefore they can use that in their marketing. You can also use this as a really direct way of taking your claims out and putting them into your marketing. So, you know, things like 71% of people liked the flavour of the beans, and you can use that in there as well. So what's interesting here is we've got two different questions. You can see it's about the flavour of the beans for A and B, and the thickness of the sauce. So two aspects that people would really look at when they're looking at beans. The flavour, obviously, we can see that sample B has got a higher percentage than it has for sample A, and sample A hasn't got that 66% either. So it's quite a kind of difference for your marketing there. But the thickness of the sauce was definitely a sort of better with product A. So really, it's an interesting thing for them to do. If their product was sample B, they might look at improving the thickness of their sauce to match up. And if their product was sample A, they might look at improving their flavour. So this is obviously our comparison to say about who's got a higher percentage, but what's really important with a comparison study is there a significant difference between those products, and can we say one of them is actually better than the other? So that's what this statistic's all about. We have a t-test. So I've just taken out the flavour of the beans for this one in particular. And we can see that sample B obviously had a higher mean average. But what's really important is that our report has gone through, said what is the, what makes it a statistical difference between those two products. That changes for every question. It depends on the amount of participants on the study. So this is a really helpful statistic to have built in. And as we can see, it says that there is evidence those two samples differ. We can definitely say that sample B is significantly better than sample A. And as we say, we can take that out and put it into the marketing. Fortunately, in this case, our client's product was sample A, but it's really good for them to know. As mentioned, their kind of thickness of their sauce was really good. The consistency, the quality was good. The flavour wasn't as good. And that's something they can look at improving. So it's a really helpful kind of process to go through when you're looking at food and drink development.
Yeah, but seeing this actually is also shows why it's also very useful most of the time to first of all ask about the overall assessment and overall liking of the product, because in this also in the end will show you probably which is more important, the flavor or the thickness of the sauce, and which is really the driving actually the preference in the end. So never forget the kind of overall evaluation, and this can also tell you what are the criteria that consumers judge the product by.
Absolutely. So legislation as well, as I said, we'll kind of keep bringing it up as we go through. So this is really important, and this was in the UK. So we're looking at the Advertising Standards Authority for their legislation, their code of conduct about comparison claims. And what's really important is they're saying is complex comparisons, such as a comparison between the efficiency of products, which could be kind of seen as the taste between products, require a large amount of quite technical evidence. And just going back a slide, you can see we had 181 participants on the study. That's really important because we need to make sure we've got lots of people. As Thomas said, people have very different preferences when it comes to flavour. So we really need to make sure we've got a huge amount of evidence behind this to say, yes, there is a kind of difference between this.
Yeah.
And we've got
We also saw in our last webinar, sorry to interrupt, we saw in the last webinar that when we talked about comparison testing, that actually the if you really want to identify differences, it's better to increase your sample size, because otherwise the error of margin will be too big and the confidence intervals will be too big to see a difference. So be clear that actually if you want to compare, you have a reasonable number of respondents.
Absolutely, it can be too different. If it's a small amount of participants, we'll get no significant difference. So you can't say which one's better. But yes, to absolutely keep the samples large. One reason for the legislation, and the other reason so you can actually draw conclusions from your data. And what's really important here as well is if you do any comparison claims, always be very clear about what that information is and make sure the consumers can access it, because you don't want to mislead them at all. So back to Thomas.
Yeah, the other area of ingredients that you, of claims that you often see is about ingredients. So we say contains a lot of, or is made with, and of course, mostly with ingredients that have a very positive connotations, like vegetable herbs. So it always sounds good if there are lots of good herbs in there, because people really know that this is something positive. The other thing is also the kind of reference to handling. So you see then the claims like carefully picked, hand-picked, carefully selected, with the choice of the best of. So there are lots of nice ways for marketing to make this sound nice without saying too much, which is in the end doesn't require a validation, apart from, of course, that the percentages of ingredients in there must be referenced right. And the next area of claims that we see often is performance claims, who refer to the convenience and easy handling of the product. So something like the Uncle Ben's you see prepared in 2 minutes, easy to use. Also functional advantages were appropriate. I took an example from the professional kitchens in there, where in food service, of course, some other areas and the kind of performance is becoming more important, like bain-marie stability, more volume when whipped. These, of course, are things for a professional chef that play a big role, smooth and creamy results. So, so these claims, in a way, of course, need a technical validation or a kind of proof when they are being developed, but also normally you don't really test them that much with consumers. At least you don't validate them with consumers. You can develop them with consumers. You can identify what kind of convenience is expected from a product and how relevant is that to claim it in the end, but it's not a kind of validation. Coming to a bigger and more difficult area, or maybe not even more difficult area, but a different area, is health and nutrition claims. And this is where, before we talked about claims that are very loose and in a way can be brought very broadly put on the pack, health and nutrition claims are very strictly regulated in Europe. So food-bearing claims that could mislead consumers are prohibited. And there's a public EU register of nutrition and health claims that lists all nutrition claims and all health claims that are allowed and are not allowed. So if you want to use a health claim, you have to apply for permission to use the claim. It's being recommended either allowed or not allowed, which makes it really difficult on the one hand side. On the other hand, of course, also very clear, both for producers and for consumers. But what is a health claim? Just to distinguish between the two of them, a health claim is, very simply put, it says that a substance does something to your health. So it's a food or a dietary ingredient, whatever it is, and it does something to your health. If you go into more depth in health claims for treating, preventing, or curing diseases like more heavily difficult diseases like Alzheimer's or cancer are not allowed at all on food products. If you talk about treating cancer, you would expect this to be a medication, and then it needs to be a drug claim, and it has nothing to do with food. So there will never be a claim of curing cancer on a food product. If anything, it's the medicine. And we took out some examples of authorized and non-authorized claims from the EU database, just for you to see how things look like. So you can, for instance, claim when it comes to calcium, you can claim that calcium contributes to normal blood clotting. So this is obviously proven that it does and that it works, and then you can use that claim on your product. Or calcium contributes to normal muscle function. So this works. This has been medically proven, scientifically proven, and then it can be used with some restrictions, as also mentioned over there. If we go one step slide on to non-authorized claims, I looked at dairy as an example. Dairy, for instance, is there's hardly anything allowed when claiming about dairy. So some food companies wanted to claim that dairy foods promote dental health in chicken. This couldn't be proven scientifically, so this is not allowed. 3 portions of dairy food every day as part of a balanced diet may help promote a healthy body weight during childhood and adolescence. Not approved. Even if it's already carefully phrased in terms of may help, still it's not allowed. So there's in general, the authorities are very, very strict in what you can claim. So using your food products to have a health benefit is extremely difficult. So when we come to nutrition claims, it's different from health claims. Nutrition means they claim which the food has a particular beneficial nutritional property due to its energy or its nutrients, which it contains or it doesn't contain. So it doesn't go as far as having an explicit health benefit, but it just says it has an energy impact or nutrient impact. But also, they are only permitted if they are listed, if they are officially listed. Anything that is not listed cannot be used. And we show some examples on the next page. So something like low energy, low fat with no added sugars, very low sodium, source of fiber, high protein. So you will see a lot of these claims that tell you what kind of energy level is in there or what kind of ingredients are in there, but they do not talk about the impact it has on your health. So you might assume that low fat is good because it will probably keep your obesity down, but this is not, you're not allowed to talk about this impact. You can just mention this is low fat and assume that people probably think that this will have a positive impact on your weight.
I always find these such interesting claims, and I think we talked about it, Thomas, where someone said to me a while ago, if something's healthy for you, it doesn't have to tell you necessarily. You don't have on a banana that it's good for you because you
no.
You do tend to see higher claims like this on, I mean, not necessarily they're bad for you, but nutrient claims do tend to be put on products that are trying to look like they're having a health claim, like you say, but necessarily can't really say it because there isn't necessarily a health claim there. So it's really
exactly. Exactly.
I do want to touch on novel foods. So this is something, if you're at all involved in CBD, I do have a whole CBD webinar, so I won't go into too much detail. But if it's something you are interested in with food, that they do have to be on the novel foods application. So novel foods are basically any food that wasn't a food before May 1997 in the EU. And that includes things like CBD. There was a change because they were going to say about hemp, but they found evidence that actually it's been used for hundreds of years in food as a nutritional sort of ingredients. So that actually is fine if it's a hemp ingredient. But yes, certainly CBD must go through a novel foods application. What's really important about this as well is there are no authorized claims for CBD on the EU register. So again, we see this a lot with CBD products, but certainly any ingestibles, you don't really see any claims on there because there are no approved claims. So I always say, don't feel like you can't make claims about your products. If you've got a CBD product, whether it's ingestible or not, you can't make claims about the CBD, but you can make claims about the product. And think about the subjective marketing claims and not the health benefits. So for example, it could be something like, I don't know, we usually talk about it with cosmetics, but in terms of an ingestible, you might say, this is the best product I've ever used. I would recommend this product. I would buy this product. I've noticed a difference in my skin. I've noticed a difference in my mood, because they're all subjective things that people can agree with. But what you can't say is that the CBD is causing that, essentially.
No, but you can claim, of course, the CBD content and assume that quite a few people know what CBD can do to you without explicitly mentioning it.
And that's exactly it. So lots of people don't make claims about CBD products because there is an assumption, even though there's no claims out there. But this is where I'm kind of coming in and saying, do make claims about the product still and don't rely on that, because it's a very competitive market now. There are a lot of people that just have CBD oil and they're selling it. So to make your product stand out, get some kind of claims about it, but just be really cautious about staying within those regulations.
Mm-hmm.
It's about you, Thomas.
Okay, yeah. So what's also different when I talked about difference between the cosmetics claim that and food products, cosmetics normally are used as they are. So you will have a deodorant and you just use it as it is. While when it comes to food product, very often, in general, they come in very different levels of finalization. So you have products that you use as they are, but there are quite a few products that you just use as ingredients. So this has also implications on how to use them and how to test them. So they are part of a preparation or cooking process with different levels of convenience. So you've got very basic ingredients or raw ingredients, you've got semi-finished products, or you've got fully finished products, which can lead you into different claims direction. So you can think a lot about what kind of relevant claim can be you can use, and this can be part of the research process. And I wanted to share a case study with you where we did exactly this, trying to find the right claim. So we were approached by a food manufacturer who was working on an innovative cooking product, which, funny enough, they had developed for a while, but product development had moved away a bit away from the original idea. So they started from an idea that they wanted to develop, and then they developed something beautiful, which didn't have too much to do with the original idea, but they all felt was very strong. So they came with us and said, actually, what exactly is this product now? How has it been used? And how can we best claim what it does? So we wanted to deliver in-depth understanding of the product performance and its benefits, which we could then use for claim. So what we did was a two-step online survey with product experience. So we sent these products to 60 respondents, including a very general description of the product. So very briefly, and this was all people who could cook and who like to cook and who like to try out new recipes and know what to do in a kitchen. So if you give them a product, they can develop their own ideas of what to do with it. So we didn't want to prescribe any recipes or give them any good direction, but just actually here you see the products. This is roughly what it's all about. Use it, cook with it. And it was actually amazing what came back. So people really loved it. They loved to explore their creativity and play around with the product. And well, the nice thing about food is there are so many people who love food that they can also work with it. And they did. And which also, in a way, the good thing was also we in our system also allows us to collect feedback in terms of pictures and etc. So it wasn't just this ordinary questionnaire. We also got a lot more detailed feedback and material. Part of it we show on the next page, where on the right-hand side you see a lot of these dishes that people had prepared with this new cooking product. And on the left-hand side, you see an example of a recipe where people had noted down what they did with the product, how they used it, what they liked about it, what they disliked about it, how they would describe the product, what were the key properties and benefits of the product, and maybe even with some ideas of claims, even though we know that consumers are not the most creative when it comes to defining claims. They can judge whether they are right or not, but they are not in creative agency. But this gives a lot of stimulus and a lot of input for the next step, where we had an in-depth follow-up. So based on the results, we developed a detailed questionnaire where we had lots of questions on the products, because and also 26 claims for product position and communication. So based on what the people had told us, we developed claims and claim directions and claim ideas, and we sent back this questionnaire to the same respondents, so the people who had cooked with the products, who could then evaluate and how far they agree with the claims or not. We saw some. So these were actually, this was this is German, but anyway, I think it gives you the key direction. These were the kind of top 10 attributes and top 10 claims that people agreed to. It had a lot to do with simplicity, creativity, refinement, seasoning. So a lot of new angles for the producer, for the company, to see how they could position these products and what they could put on claims and communicating this product. We took the results afterwards in the end and discussed them with the client, where we had a one-day workshop with their marketing department and the development departments, so that in the end, people really understood this product, understood consumer reaction on the product, understood which claims could be relevant and how they could package this into a concept or a bundle and to explain the product, so that in the end, it would allow them to go to the market and sell this product with a strong proposition and a strong claim. So I think it was a nice study. Would have loved to do more of it, but unfortunately, it was a one-off opportunity. So if ever you come across a situation that you want to find the right claim and positioning for your product, come back to us. We can help you there. At the end, I just came up with just to show you some examples of claims that you see in the market. Some example of food claims. This is all from the UK, I think. This is Knorr rich beef stock cubes. So made with real meat juices, gluten-free rich beef stock cube is really versatile and ideal for giving all your traditional family favorites a beefier taste. So claims, as I said, are typically a combination of appealing taste, ingredient, convenience claims. So you've got this rich flavor, carefully selected blends of herbs and ingredients, delicately enhance the natural flavors of your dish. All this is nice marketing talk, but gives you a very good feeling for the product. And of course, you see all these kind of nutrient claims, and they're gluten-free, no added MSG, no artificial colors, no artificial preservatives, all the things that are not in there. Next example, just to have it balanced between Unilever and Nestle, and Maggi example, which is similar. They also talk about tasty, extra veggies, super convenient, super versatile, delicious, at 30% less fat. So it goes in the same direction. This is indeed where good marketing comes into the picture, where they can nicely phrase it so that you immediately get the feeling you want to buy and try it out. And the last example, which I found an interesting product in itself, Dormio smooth tomato and hidden veggie goodness sauce for bolognese. So if you're struggling to find ways of getting your family to eat more fruit and veggies, then Dormio smooth tomato and hidden veggie goodness sauce is your answer. So in a way, a cheating way to get vegetables for all the people who don't want to eat vegetables. I found it an amazing product. But you see the similar claims. So full of veggies, all the flavor you need, zero hassle, 2 out of 5 a day. So lots of nice sounding claims that in the end don't need a consumer validation, but just need to have a kind of strong marketing and good story for people to buy into the product and to buy the product in the end. I think that was it. Just to sum up some key thoughts that we had over here. For food and drink, claims are a combination of taste, ingredient, convenience, health, and nutrition. For you to keep in mind, health and nutrition claims are strongly regulated in Europe. There is a definite list of what is allowed and what isn't. So you can easily look it up. It's, of course, in the internet from as EU legislation. Taste claims can become more convincing if they get a reference. And this should be validated in a comparison test. And we talked about, you remember Carys' beautiful example of the baked beans, where you can validate this, and this can create a strong story. You can use market research to identify the relevance of multiple alternative claims. Think of my case study, where we had a product with consumers, and they worked with it, and they themselves helped us develop the right claim in the end.
Absolutely. I think the freedom as well, always to think about, you know, at the end of the day, we provide consumer research, it is subjective, and that's where your freedom really does come in with food and drink claims. So, you know, we've done things like mum approved or recommended by 9 out of 10 mums because they've tested on their babies, the babies loved it. So yeah, all that kind of preference stuff can really, really help elevate your marketing, as well as thinking about all those, you know, sort of nutritional claims and things like that we've discussed. But great. So I'm going to summarize just with a little bit more information about us before we go through to a Q&A. So just a summary to say that we're an award-winning market research agency. So do think of us when you think about your consumer research and getting these claims. We are compliant with the Cosmetic Vigilance Act. That's not going to be quite the same reporting for food and drink, but obviously we still have undesirable event reporting that is in place for food and drink studies. This is really important, especially when thinking of things like allergies. There are certain due diligence have to go into place when you're looking at recruiting participants for food and drink, things like allergies. So it's really important that we have all of these systems in place, which we do. And we also have full product liability insurance for that reason, in case anything, God forbid, does go horribly wrong, which we really don't expect it to. We've got an ISO 27001, and that is to do with GDPR and all data protection matters. So, you know, we're fully audited on that. We've got a huge database of volunteers, and it's really important we keep their data anonymous. We've got an ISO 901 as well, which is to do with our quality assurance. So again, you know, we're really looking after our systems, processes, and procedures. We're a partner to the Market Research Society, certainly helpful when we're looking at those market research cases, as Thomas has gone through identifying those claims. We do the best practice, we do ethical research as well. You get bespoke regulatory advice, that is what I'm here for, and you always get a designated study manager, so you have one point of contact throughout the study process. You haven't got to sort of be passed around a team. So great, I've seen some questions start to come in, so I'll start off with those, but please do feel free to put in any more questions you have. So this one's saying, does the carefully selected or hand-picked claims need to be substantiated? Thomas, do you have any kind of answer for that one?
No, I think yes, one way or the other, yes, it has to be. So I think as a manufacturer, you shouldn't lie. so carefully selected, of course, is a very, very vague thing. But if you just put in everything from a field that you just put in a basket, this is certainly not carefully selected. So I think there needs to be a selection process in here, and handpicked definitely also. If you only have machines picking it, then you can't use that claim. So I think there needs to be manufacturer-based substantiation behind it.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, every claim needs to be validated. It's something we always talk about. You can't just say anything sort of without it.
No. But
they are really interesting claims in terms of getting that validated. And as you said, you just really, without sort of saying these claims, really think about how you would prove that. That's always the case of any kind of claim ever. At the end of the day, you can always be called upon by the advertising authorities in the territory you're selling. They'll ask for your evidence, and you need to show it in some way.
And by your competitors. So even if the authorities are not behind it, actually you can be sure that your competitors will have a good eye on what you're doing. And if you have a claim that cannot be substantiated, they will also probably go after you.
Absolutely, especially for claims like that. If you've got a source which is the same price as those theirs, and they know they haven't done handpick, they're going to investigate it. It's really good point. And another question here, is the EU Register for Nutrition and Health Claims going to be adopted by the UK after Brexit? Currently, the case is that everything is being adopted by the UK after Brexit. Nothing's going to change straight away. So yes, but there is obviously, it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. There'll be no obligation for them to keep these sort of legislation in place. There will be a change. Right now, we're looking at a direct copy. So everything that's going on in the EU.
And the question is, of course, also how this will develop in the medium term, because I think it will not be updated after the end of this year. Probably not. so I would expect an increasing divergence over the next couple of years.
Absolutely, and I mean it's the same with any kind of EU regulation at the moment. The UK can find ways to make things more beneficial in terms of having more sort of things allowed in. So yeah, we might see some changes, but for right now there won't be. So just very much keep your ears to the ground. I think is what I would say with that one. So that's all the questions we've got in. I don't see any more coming in, so I'm going to assume we've covered everything. But please do feel free to get in touch. Oh no, I've got another question. That always happens. So for the future, it's better to keep an eye on both registers, I suppose, especially for products destined for both UK and EU. Absolutely.
Definitely.
It's quite simple. You don't have to memorize the registers inside and out. Don't feel like you have to understand everything that's on there. But what I would do is look at it on a case-by-case basis. If there's a claim you want to make, check it off on both registers. It is really easy information to find out. It's only difficult when you're kind of thinking, well, what claims can I make about it, and have a look through it and see what's allowed. Think about your claims first. And then look into it. But I mean, generally, always be cautious with health and nutrition claims. It's one of those things that it's hard to be innovative, I guess. Think about what's already on the market, what's already allowed, because generally that's the way to go. If you want to be innovative, you've got to be prepared to get a huge amount of evidence behind those claims, from kind of the ingredients up. As I said, things like low in cholesterol and things like that, that's got a huge body of evidence behind it. That's why it's allowed on there. So yeah, it's just an interesting one to sort of think about. Great. Well, I think that is all the questions though. But as I was going to say, we're going to send out this recording after, and that will have both mine and Thomas's contact information on there. So if you do think of other questions, or if you want to discuss a particular project, you are more than welcome to contact us directly.
Yes.
Just to kind of finish off, there's some information about some SCS events. So they've got the distance learning course, probably not food and drink based, but I know some of you are also in the cosmetics. I know a lot of you are also involved in the cosmetics industry. So please do feel free to look at that course if you want to learn more on the essentials of cosmetic science. And there's also the IFSCC Congress, which will be in London in 2022. So our next webinar, I was going to give our contact information then, but we do have, for the last webinar for the year for me and Thomas together, we'll be doing one more in December, which is basically test timing throughout the year. We're going to be looking at essentially considering your schedule for how you should basically time your tests as the year goes on. Things like, if you're going to test an SPF product, maybe don't test it in January. If you need to test it in the UK on consumers here, things like that. Basically, it'd be an interesting one for us to cover and hopefully help you plan for your schedules for next year. So there is our contact information, but as I said, I will follow up with email on this. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for joining me, Thomas.
Thank you, Carys, and thank you all.
Thank you very much. And yes, I'll be following up shortly.